Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of The Fishing Teacher, and really appreciate you guys checking today's video out because guys, we have got a good video about glide baits today if you've never caught a bass on a glide bait. And I think a lot of people haven't. Most people have heard about a glide bait and probably are curious about them, but there's some tips and advice I want to give you if you've never thrown one of these lures before that's really going to help you sort of maximize your success on it. So we'll get into that in today's video. Also guys, before we get started, just a quick invitation. I'd like to invite everybody out there to consider becoming a channel member here at The Fishing Teacher. Good way to support the channel. All you have to do is go on your browser to my Fishing Teacher homepage and click that join button. And also hitting that subscribe button to The Fishing Teacher also helps the channel, and liking those videos and sharing the videos is a good way to help too, so really appreciate that. Okay guys, the infamous glide bait, man, the things that so realistic looking. I mean, the modern technology on these glide baits, they just look, this is the Megabass eye slide here, but there is a ton of different models out there, different companies that make glide baits, and they look great. I mean, they probably are the most realistic looking lure category of any lure out there is the modern day glide bait. And that's why they're so successful. That's why they catch so many big fish. So I want to sort of talk a little bit about them and give you guys some foundational advice that's really going to help you out. And also guys, I'll attach my Tackle Warehouse glide bait link in the description. They got tons of glide baits there. Just you can go through it and pick out something that looks good. They come in a lot of different sizes, but I'll tell you guys right up now, don't go for the big honking huge ones. They make them up to 10 or 12 inches long. Try to stay with a glide bait around 6 to 8 inches long. This is going to be the best size in terms of actually getting a fish to bite it and also catching, bigger fish on it. The 6 to 8 inch one will catch, pound-and-a-half or 2 pound fish, and it'll catch, 10 or 15 pound fish. If you go above 6 or 8 inches and you start to get into those, those 8, 10, and 12 inch glide baits, your number of strikes go way down. I mean, way, way down. And you pretty much have to be on a lake that's got giant fish in it. So those big glide baits, the ones that are over 8 inches long, are for like lakes in California and Florida and, Texas, places that have giant bass. But for most people across the country, the 6 to 8 inch size is going to be the ones you want here. Okay, now a couple of different things with this. First of all, if you've never caught a bass on a glide bait, don't expect to catch a lot of bass on a glide bait. So you have to have sort of a shift in your expectations. So when you decide to do this, there's a couple of different things that are important. Number one is you have to commit to it. You can't take one of these glide baits and throw it for 10 minutes and put it down and say they're not biting it. If you want to catch one on a glide bait, take nothing but a rod and a glide bait. Don't even bring any other lures in your boat with you to tempt you from getting away from it. That's the number one thing. Number two is lower your expectations to where if you get 5 bites in one day on a glide bait, you've had an outstanding day. And most days, if you get 1 or 2 bites on a glide bait, you've had a good day. But the upside to that is when you get bit on one of these things, most of the time it's going to be a big fish. Now, here's a couple things you can expect out of it. When you're fishing a glide bait, you're going to have by far more fish follow it and look at it than ever are going to bite it. This is what is the most frustrating thing about fishing a glide bait if you've never fished one before, because if you fish it in a clear water situation, which actually they are better in clear water, anytime you got water visibility over about 3 feet is for a glide bait. It's another tip there. 3 to 5 foot visibility is perfect in my opinion. But in that clear water, since these things most of the time, I like to fish them in sight. I don't like to fish them out of sight. You see, it attracts fish to them. The fish look at these things and they're curious because they're very realistic looking. But the problem you have is these fish, they're famous for getting up and swimming around these things and looking at them and just moving off. I can't tell you out of all the years that I fished a glide bait, I've probably had, I'm going to guess, I don't know, 300 bass over the course of my glide bait fishing that have actually seen the bait and I saw the fish coming up on the bait. Out of that 300 fish that I actually saw hit the thing, I probably have only caught like 50 of those 300. And maybe even more than 300 that actually come up and saw it. But you're your actual fish to bite ratio is going to be very low on this bait. So most of the time, guys, if you have 10 fish follow this thing, and if you get one of them to bite, that's some pretty good percentages there. So sort of get that into your mind right off the bat. You're going to see that. Now, in terms of how to fish this bait and where you want to fish it, that's critical. One of the things about a glide bait is when you reel it straight through the water, it goes like this. It just sort of swims. All of them do this. They swim sort of sideways, just with a slow retrieve. And you've got to use a slow retrieve with that. If you try to work them too fast, they're going to blow out to the side. They're not going to look good. But a nice slow retrieve, it'll come through the water like an S here. But don't do that all the time. Reel it through the water like this for about 2 or 3 cranks, and then snap your rod like that, almost like a jerk bait. And so it'll be coming through the water like this, and then you'll snap it, and it goes to one side like that, and then you can snap it again, and it jerks hard to another side. And sometimes that snapping action will trigger the fish to hit it. Another piece of advice I'll give you to help catch one, if you've never done it before, is when you see a bass follow this thing, which you're going to see them follow it, speed the thing up. You do not want them to get a good look at this because it's too big. They know it's fake once they get too close to it. So if you're reeling your glide bait through the water like this, and all of a sudden you see this tank coming up behind it, speed it up and try to get it out of there. Like, just work it real fast, even if it blows out of the water. Because when you do that, the fish has to decide right then. They have to decide, okay, am I going to get it or not? They can't think about it. And most of the time, if you speed it up like that, you can trigger a strike with it. Now, the glide bait, depending upon the size of it, it requires some very special equipment. Most of the time, I throw my glide baits on my flipping stick, on my Megabass flipping stick, 25-pound test Seaguar and Vizex line, because I don't use the giant glide baits. I use the 6 and 7 inch ones, and that you can throw those on a flipping stick. If you do go bigger on the glide bait, you're going to need a bigger rod, like an 8-foot heavy action with a larger diameter spool reel. But since I'm telling you guys, go to the smaller ones, a flipping stick will suffice just fine with it. And also, the type of areas that you fish it on is really critical too. I probably caught more fish on a glide bait fishing in and around some type of point than anywhere. Just fan casting around points. If you have standing or submergent timber, it's really good around that standing or submergent timber. It's really good around a floating boat dock. If you have floating boat docks, especially lakes that have a mix of a spotted bass and a largemouth, you can catch them really good on boat docks. I did really good down at Lake Hartwell, fishing a glide bait around docks for big spotted bass down there. It's a perfect example with it. And on any type of just windy bank. I prefer some type of wind. Ideal conditions, if you want to try to catch one on a glide bait, this is what you want to look for. Try to go either in the springtime of the year or the late fall. Those are the 2 best times for a glide bait, when the water temperature is in the 60s, like 60 to 70 degrees is perfect. Get a day out there that you have about a 10 to 15 mile an hour wind and a cloudy day. So if you've got clear water, say water visibility of 4 or 5 foot, a cloudy day with some wind, and water temperature 60 to 70 degrees, that's perfect scenario for a glide bait. So anyway, guys, give it a try, man. It's a fun bait to fish, and the thing that keeps you on them, man, is when you see those big ones come up behind it. It'll burn you too. It's like if you fish tournaments, don't ever fish a glide bait in a tournament, because you'll see these big ones follow it and you'll never catch one. You'll wind up zeroing by the end of the day, but you've got 35 pounds of fish looking at your bait. That's sort of the downfall of it. But anyway, I hope it helps, guys. We'll talk later.